everyone, and welcome back to my channel. So today we're going to be doing an inner child video, and this is something that I am very connected to. I want to say first of all that I feel like I was made to talk about this topic because it's taken me 26 years, but I feel like I was made to talk about it because I have a lot of Cancer in my chart, and Cancerian is all about the baby. So if you have Cancer in your chart, you're most likely ready to get this on, all right, to start this, because it's very important. We're going to be talking about all the topics today. I have like 4 or 5 topics to talk about. We're going to start off with the basics. So let's just jump right on into it. Number 1, why do you feel so unconfident? Why are you unable to deal with your emotions? And why are you unable to have boundaries? So we want to start off with why and where does it come from. So I'm not going to go like heavy into it because I want this to be like a hack video, because when you're overwhelmed, the last thing you want is all this information. So for me, I'm exactly the same. It's really important to just break it down into small sections. So the one thing as to why you struggle with boundaries, why you struggle to say no, why you attract certain men, why you attract certain dodgy characters in your life, you know, all that stuff, why you can't handle being alone, which is perfectly fine, by the way. As you know, all these things you've attracted is actually perfectly fine. It's actually very normal, okay? So like the other video I say, society. Society doesn't help, so that's one big factor. So society as a whole is very toxic. So it impacts families, impacts religion, it impacts then, you know, love, marriage, things like that. So this can have an effect on us as babies, as children. When we're growing up with parents who haven't been taught, through no fault of their own, it's literally, if we were in a tribe, we would have been taught this. It will be a normal thing. But because we're not in a tribe, it's a thing. So basically, the reason why you feel like you can't be confident in your own skin, why you don't have boundaries, why you struggle to say no, why you struggle to take up space, all these things, all these things are naturally should be things you should be allowed to do. They're basic human rights. The reason why you can't do it was most likely because you had parents or a parent or someone significant in your life, most likely a parent or a parental figure, obviously depending on if this parent is biological to you, someone in your life who wasn't validating, who didn't mirror your emotions. So if you were going through a lot of turmoil, if you were sad, if you were stressed out, that parent couldn't sit there with you and be like, it's okay, you're going to be fine, this is normal, these feelings are normal. That is what naturally a parent should be like. But if that parent hasn't been parented themselves at a young age, it's literally a ripple effect. That's why you have ancestral trauma, and you get these videos where it's like this girl holding a flame and then she gives it to her child or her parent and she just blows it out and gives it to her. Like, that's literally what it's like, is you're the child holding this flame, got all this beautiful energy, natural authenticity, and you give it to your parent to help you with it if you have questions, and they hold it and they blow it out and they just give it back to the child. And that's basically what it is trauma. So there's someone in your family who didn't validate you, who didn't mirror you. They could have had addiction issues, they could have had trauma, they could have had anything really, basically feeling very unsafe. So they would have ended up going into their addictions. They could have become a narcissist where basically they're very sensitive, but they struggle. So they then hold it all in and then they lash out. It's your fault. It's always you it's always you being the problem. You're this, you're that. That's narcissistic behavior. It's like it's never responsible. So you could have had a child in the family. I'm not a psychologist. I don't know the proper terms, but this is what I have dealt with myself and what I've witnessed in people is someone who's an addict. You could have had a dad who was not there for you, who was busy working through society, no fault of his own. But if you were affected by this, then completely valid with how you feel. You could have a mum who was very insecure, who didn't help you with your emotions, didn't validate you, left you crying on the floor, felt overwhelmed by your feelings, so she just couldn't be there for you. Basically what it is also is something about boundaries as well. So if you struggle with boundaries, whatever you struggle with is most likely what you couldn't deal with in childhood, what wasn't mirrored back to you. So if you struggle with boundaries, most likely your boundaries are violated. Maybe your family were over obsessed about your life. Maybe they were too smothering. Maybe they weren't cuddly enough. One big thing that really affected me and what I've dealt with is boundaries. And what happened is in these parent dynamics with the child is they weren't allowed to have boundaries. So basically this parent was very narcissistic, was very intense, and basically used their power to get what they needed out of you because they feel low, they're lacking inside, they have a hole within inside of them, they're lacking in something, they have a void within inside of them, and they're trying to fill it for the validation of the child. So this is a narcissistic behavior, kind of like anything from, you know, you look at all this, like Cinderella, the stepmom, you've got Rapunzel with the Gothel mum who's like trying to reel her back. That's narcissistic behavior from women. This is the same thing with men as well. So basically you weren't validated. You were told that you're wrong. You were basically not mirrored in a way that is where you should be mirrored. It's not kind, it's not unconditional, it's very conditional, it's very childish. It's not someone who can regulate their emotions. It's someone, if you were brought up by somebody who can regulate their emotions, who is in touch with their feminine and masculine side, depending on the gender, you know, that is going to help you to grow up and feel comfortable. And it's there's so many things as to why you feel like this, but a lot of it, most of it's childhood, because childhood is the foundation, and at a very young age you're like a sponge. So any person you have around you, you're taking on all their aspects. So if you had a narcissistic parent, you are taught to shrink yourself, you are taught to shrink your boundaries so they can get their way. So what this shows the child is that they've got to please that parent. So if you have people pleasing tendencies, most likely you have a parent who basically got off on you being the person who didn't have boundaries, who pleased them when you didn't have boundaries. So if you can recognize this, and definitely a certain person in your family, or at least a ripple effect of people, then it will show you why you are the way you are. And this will ripple into your relationships. This will ripple into your romantic partnerships. This will ripple into your friendships. This will ripple into everything. And I'm going to try not to say ripple too much because it's Mercury retrograde and I can't talk. So that's basically why you struggle with boundaries, why you struggle to feel safe, why you struggle to feel comfortable in your own skin. You could have had there's lots of different things. One big thing is body image as well, especially as women. And as a woman, we have been very much manipulated through society. We've been told we're this image, this symbol, this thing to be used. Oh my God, there's so many things I could talk about. One of the things is body issues. It's feeling uncomfortable in your body, whether you feel too large, too thin, whatever it is. It could even be you just don't like people looking at you. This would have come from childhood a lot of the time. It could have come from a parent, most likely the same gender as you, who is very insecure with their body. So they picked on you. One of the things that I've dealt with is criticism, intense criticism. So I felt very, very uncomfortable showing off parts of my body. It could be anything from my shoulders to my legs to my chest area, anything. And that's not normal. That is shameful behavior. Like, that is not normal. So what you've dealt with and what you've gone through, it's not normal. It is normal for what you've been through. It's validating, like it's validating for you because you've been through it. And it's like, oh yes, I'm going to validate myself. I have been through that. Yes, of course you have. And it's really uncomfortable and it's upsetting, but also it's not normal adult behavior. These people are children in adult bodies. And that is why inner child healing is incredibly important, because your inner child has had to exit your body for you to feel safe. So for you to blend in with your environment, for you to survive your family dynamic, most likely it was toxic in some certain way, for you to survive this family dynamic, you had to shrink yourself. And your inner child, your authenticity, your personality, the expressive side of you, the loud side of you, the quiet side of you, the messy side of you, which is the beautiful side, the normal parts of you had to go. They had to just be taken away, because basically your survival was the most important thing. All of these things are survival strategies to keep you safe. So if you had somebody who was overbearing, who basically wouldn't let you have your own way, who basically your opinions didn't matter, which they do at any age, your opinions matter. Of course, the parent will need to step in and obviously make sure that you're safe, but you're allowed to have an opinion, you're allowed to have choice. But if this wasn't modeled to you, you'll feel like you'll have trouble making choices. You'll basically get into relationships that aren't the right choice for you, but you won't know this. You'll just keep thinking, why do I keep attracting these people who are nasty and toxic and corrupt? Oh, it must be, you know, and if you're not taught this, you'll think, oh, it's probably the partner. Maybe I'll change the partner. But then again, you're still the one in the relationship. So it takes two to tango. So it's not the person, you are in the relationship as well. But if you're not taught that you're a valid person in the relationship too, you get to take up space, you get to have opinions, you get to express yourself, then you'll always think that a partnership is you pleasing someone and being there for them. But at the end of the day, if that person's not there for you, which most likely they haven't done in childhood as well, then you'll think that it's normal. Pleasing the other person, which is a very big thing, especially for women, it is not fun. Okay, and if there are any guys watching, you are welcome to be here, but I will mainly focus on women and femininity, because that's kind of where I'm going with my channel at this point. I love talking about femininity and feminine energy. But if you're a man and you're watching this, please carry on watching, because this is for everyone, but this is mainly for those of you who are women, because that's kind of where my energy is focusing on. So number 2, how to essentially do inner child work is sitting with your feelings. You're going to need a space. Okay, you're going to need a space where you can feel safe. Most likely you are going to want to work with a therapist first to kind of unravel a lot of your trauma, because you won't realize why you're going through it. Everyone's process is different. Mine started with therapy, then shadow work and therapy, and now I'm doing it all by myself because that's what I feel like I need to do. So I would recommend a therapist who can work with shadow work with you, because shadow work helps you to unravel why you feel like this, because a lot of the time is we treat our parents like they're God, like they are, you know, and they love that, especially if they're narcissists. They love it because it means that you're always there for them. You are always getting on your knees and praising them and doing whatever they want, which is very toxic. They don't treat you like you're an individual. They treat you as an extension of getting their way, of the extension of themselves. How to start inner child work. So how you do it is you make sure you've got a space by yourself. I'd recommend not being in your family home. You can do this with your family around you, but if it's to do with your family and there's someone toxic in your family or someone who you don't feel safe around, it's going to be really hard for your inner child to come through. There has to be a space where your heart chakra can open. That's what your inner child is going to be doing. She's going to be opening your heart. So basically you want to sit with her and you want to invite her in. And one thing that really helped me was to imagine that she was actually standing in front of me. So a child, most likely 3, 6 years old, could be a tiny little baby. If she's a baby, I end up just having my arms like this. I like to physically do things with my body because it helps me to kind of make sure that, you know, I'm doing it properly, and it helps me to integrate it easier. So one thing is you want to create a safe space. So when you start crying, whether you feel overwhelmed, ashamed, angry, whatever they are, I want you to put your hands on your heart and I want you to invite this child in. I want you to say, you are welcome here, you are welcome here, you are welcome here, you are welcome here. What do you need? What do you want to tell me? And just say things like that. You say it in your own words. One thing for me is I tend to have a meltdown, and that's when I tend to start talking to my inner child. So I start crying as an example, and then I'll you know, if I'm sitting on a chair, I'll invite her to sit on the chair with me. So I'll physically get my hands, grab her from the floor, and I'll plop her on my lap and I'll say, I'm so sorry you're going through this. And you talk to her like a child. And this takes time, because if your heart chakra is shrunken down to this small because you've had to go out of safety, it's going to be really hard for you to be kind to yourself. It's basically just extreme kindness. That's what it is. You invite her in, and things like hugging yourself, you can grab your arms, wrap your arms around yourself, and you can sway like you're rocking a baby. You can crouch down to the floor and look at eye line as you would as a child, and that's actually a really good technique. I'm not a mother, but that's something that I can tell I'm going to be doing with my children, is sitting at eye line to my child, because knowing that they're important. What you're trying to do is you're trying to access your inner child and basically say you are important. And once I do that, once I have the position that I like, whether she's on my lap, whether I put her on the kitchen side when I'm making dinner and I'm crying my eyes out, I'll say, I know it's really hard for you, and I just start talking to her and I say, I know, I'm so sorry you feel like that, tell me more. I know it's really hard for you. This is a really, really hard time for you. Your emotions are so valid. Yeah, I know it's really hard to feel sad. Sadness is very normal though, but you weren't allowed to feel sad. But now you can feel sad, and that's okay. And you just keep going and you just keep listening. And if you don't know what to do, just sit there and be with it, because that is the most important thing, is to be with your emotions, because those emotions have not been felt most likely your entire life, because you haven't felt safe to do that, and you probably felt like it's very wrong to feel your emotions, which I'm not even going to go there because I'm going to start to get angry. It's the system. I don't like it. So one other thing is, once you've worked with your inner child, and this can take months on end, this can take a few days, it depends, and I've done a lot of shadow work, so it does help. Like, doing shadow work does help, because it helps you, it kind of gives you a container. So when you, as an empath, you've got like an empty container, because you're unconditional, and you get shit kind of thrown into this container, and what the shadow work does is it picks up that thing, and you look at it, and you work with it, and you honor it, and then you release it. So my container's pretty empty, but then I deal with the really heavy stuff right at the bottom, which is like abandonment wounds, shame, guilt, sadness, really intense stuff. But all these emotions are so valid. But the one thing that your inner child wants to do is she wants to feel seen. She wants to feel heard. She wants to know that everything's going to be okay. So another thing is the anger's going to start to come up, my love. This is the fun part. So it's all fun. It is all fun. It is actually a really beautiful thing to do. This is part of human nature. We should be doing this. Every one of us should be doing this, because this is basic nature. This is basic human nature, is unconditional love. It's been shoved down. It's been thrown around. It's been, whatever it is, it's a mess. So the next thing you want to be doing is number 3, is work with your inner teenager. So your inner child, she's very small and very tiny, and one thing that's really good, actually can really help, is to watch a video of yourself as a baby when you're doing this work, or you can look at a picture of yourself, and that can really help. For me, I don't really need to do that. I've got like a massive imagination. It comes with being a psychic. But if that really helps you, great, perfectly do that. So your inner teenager is going to be really angry. So you go from your inner child, work with her a little bit, then your inner child starts to come up. Doesn't mean you've like kind of emptied out everything and worked with everything. No, it's like you got to start doing the layers. Your inner teenager will be feelings of aggression, anger, sexual stuff, things that's very hormonal, things, because at the end of the day, teenagers aren't actually messy. I feel like the only reason you go through this teenage mess is because emotions are shoved down in society. If we were in a tribe that actually honoured your emotions, I reckon being a teenager and going through your hormones would actually be quite an easy thing to do. I just generally think if your emotions are pushed down and you don't have a safe space, of course you're going to feel uncomfortable. Of course you're going to be labelled as this messy, troubled teenager. Well, because your parents can't handle your stuff, because they can't handle their own stuff. Your teenager's going to feel very pissed. She's going to be very angry. So what you want to do is you want to talk to her the same way as you would. And sometimes you can talk to her in a way that you're talking to a teenager. So instead of talking to her like a child, you talk to her like a teenager. Yeah, I know, you shouldn't have gone through that. That is really, really hard. Honestly, I feel I am so sorry. That's one thing I like to repeat to myself. I'm so sorry. I'm so sorry. I'm sorry. Please forgive me. Thank you, and I love you. Things like that. That is really, really helpful. That's the Hawaiian quote. That's really, really good. So number 4 is setting boundaries and having your own space. So I did mention having your own space before, but when you have boundaries, it's easier to have your own space to set boundaries, because then you don't feel like you've got these repercussions if you say no. You're like, well, I still have to rely on my family for rent, or I have to rely on them for a house. Yes, it is harder. Okay, I'm not going to lie. But you do this when you're ready. So if you're not ready right now, then don't. But when you do your inner child stuff, it is cracking you open, and you are dealing with a lot of trauma that's coming up. So if you're dealing with someone, if you're around somebody who's being traumatic to you, it's going to be harder for you to keep that heart chakra open, because that's the whole point, is keeping your heart chakra open, keeping your emotions on the surface so you can actually deal with them and work with them, because you are worth it. You are worthy. You are worthy of feeling your emotions. So setting boundaries, saying no is very important. So if you feel like there's something that you want to say to somebody, I really encourage you to talk to them. And most likely this is probably going to be a narcissist. This could be someone who is toxic. This could be somebody who abused you. If you feel like it's not the right time, and of course, please use your intuition, because everyone is different. I want you to cut ties with them or forgive them, or work on forgiving them in your own time, because it might not be that you actually have to talk to them. Things like writing a letter to them and not actually giving it to them. It could be talking to them, recording yourself like you would be talking to them, or having a photo of them and talk to them. You do whatever you need to do whenever you're ready, but this is just a step that I want to let you guys know if you ever want to incorporate it, because it's very important, because as you start to get more comfortable in your own skin and in your own body, and basically when people say that, I never really understood what that was, because I obviously wasn't at that point. The time that you feel the time that you feel like you're in your own skin is when you have felt your emotions, because you're in your body. A lot of our lives are spent not in our body, like we are, but we're in survival mode. We're in fight or flight. We've got addictions, which addictions are perfectly normal. They're there to help us, they're there to serve a purpose, they're there to soothe us. But it's not normal to be addicted to everything. It isn't like healthy. And if you have got addictions, send love to that part of you, because that part of you is just trying to protect you, and it's doing a really, really good job, which is great, you know. But those addictions are not there to be with you your entire life, you know. So it literally is a process, and this is like looking after a child and letting them grow up. It is a process. You have to keep going. You have to keep being really kind to yourself and get help if you need it. So once you set boundaries with people and you've told them how you feel about something, I want you to go back into your little cave and start working on those emotions again, because most likely there's going to be a lot of stuff that comes up. I don't know what number we're at. This number, I've run out of numbers now, I don't know, I'm a bit confused. I want you to hug, cry it out, and I want you to talk it out. That's one thing that has really, really helped me, is to have days where you have no idea what is going on and just be there. Like, you're not here to do stuff all the time. You are here to have fun, to play. And that's another thing as well, is play. Do things that make you feel good. Have playtime. So I will say, let's start with the hugging. So hugging, crying and imagining. This is a really, really good one to do. So having days, giving yourself permission to have days where you can hug out with yourself, where you can cry it out, where you can just be in your cocoon. So I would suggest making days off for yourself if you can, scheduling days off so you can literally just be with yourself while you're in this process. If you know that you're going through this process right now, it's really important to schedule more time off work, if you can, of course, more time away from people, letting people know I'm in hermit mode, I'm in my inner child mode, you know, things like that. Because what you're doing is you're setting boundaries for yourself, so you can completely be with yourself. Incorporating crystals and play. So anything to do with spirituality, anything to do with assisting yourself, anything to do with playing, it is absolutely needed, okay? Having days where you just are going out and doing whatever the fuck you want to do. Okay, doing whatever you want to do. So having fun, like doing stuff that makes you feel free and good and happy, and yeah, just anything that makes you feel good. Like, this is what you want to do, is you want to fill up that cup. Every day might be hard, but it doesn't mean you can't just have days where you drink a nice coffee and sit outside, or you go to a park and you look out and you watch all the dogs and the cute little babies and the cute puppies, you know, things like that. Like, this life is meant to be lived every day differently. That's why work can be very stressful. And I'm not even going to go into that, because that's society again. Your life is meant to be fun, okay? Your life is meant to be changeable and different, and it's meant to be lived through your heart and through your emotions and through how you feel, not just what you need to do. And yeah, of course we have things we need to do, and yes, we will need to force ourselves a little bit, but when we don't have to do that, relish it. Like, really relish it. If you have some space with yourself, you don't have to fill it with noise. You don't have to fill it with a TV show or loud music or anything like that. But I want you to really realise, like, this is about fun. So if there's anything that your inner child is so desperately wanting you to do, then do it. Do some painting. Maybe you weren't allowed to do painting. Maybe you weren't allowed to do tarot or something like that. Like, if there's something that you weren't allowed to do or didn't feel like you could take up space, I want you to try it, and don't feel like you have to do it. Like, that's one thing that I'm still learning, is like, if I have to do it versus what I actually want to do, because I've kind of been taught that, like, I have to follow along with everyone else. I have to basically do what is easiest for everyone else, and I don't think about myself enough. And one thing that's really helped me is actually when I start to feel a little bit of, like, you know, my emotions are like grinding sandpaper, I'm like, oh, I really don't want to do this. I step back and I think, do I really want to do this? And it's like, no. Then I step back and I don't do it if I have that option, because honestly, you are just forcing yourself into a corner. When you have done that your entire life, you don't want to just keep doing that. You want to keep backing away and putting yourself first. That is the most important thing. So that is it, guys. I really hope you enjoyed this video. I hope it came across the right way. I just want you to realize, like, people will say this, but honestly, your journey is going to be different to everyone, and the way you work, the way you've been brought up, is different to everyone. So don't ever feel like you've got to do things a certain way that anyone's told you. You don't have to do any of the techniques I've told you. Anything that resonates, take it on board. If it doesn't, that's totally fine. But just realizing like you're not on your own. Everyone is going through something, okay? And I sound like so cheesy, but honestly, they are. And if people are hiding it, then they're probably the ones in the most pain. And life is very confusing, but the one thing that can really help is, like I say, is just to take every day as living life. Don't think about it as like, I've got to do this, I've got to do that. Think about it as, I'm living my life, I'm having fun, I'm doing things that bring joy, not things that, you know, say like it's like a fitness thing and you're doing it to lose weight. Think about it like, I'm doing it to be playful, I'm doing it to have fun. And then you might end up doing exercises that bring you more joy rather than what you wanted to do. Because if you're living your life to get a certain goal, you're just going to be too much in your masculine, and you're just going to be uncomfortable, and you're going to be feeling like crap. Putting your emotions in the forefront is going to make you feel so much happier and more in control. Okay, so thank you so much for watching. I really appreciate you. If you'd like a private reading from myself, then all that information should be down below, all my private reading rates. And if you'd like to check out my Instagram, that is also down below. I love you very much. I hope you have a great day. Be kind to yourself, and I'll speak to you very soon. Bye.